Hey, this is C&D channel. I'm Chris, and this is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC 138. Overall, that main card was all finishes in some way, shape, or form. It was actually a pretty entertaining card. On paper, it definitely wasn't that strong of a card, but it really turned out to be a fun card. There's a couple stories coming out of this, so let's get right to it. Mark Munoz beat Chris Leben by corner stoppage after after the second round. Munoz looked good. His wrestling's definitely improving. I think it's fitting a little more for MMA. It does concern me though that he was getting taken down by Chris Leben. I do like that Munoz does get back to his feet. So there's some good stuff from him. He's still pretty hittable too, but he hits hard. And Munoz's ground and pound is definitely some of the best, if not the best, and strongest in the division. As far as like, because Munoz is now kind of in title talks. It's Chael Sonnen, and then Mark Munoz, and probably the winner of like Bisping versus Miller. Which honestly, I think those guys, the winner of that's gonna be kind of behind Munoz and especially Sonnen. But he had a really strong performance, nonetheless. And Munoz has been winning. He broke through to the top 10 by beating Maya, and he's been improving. There's still holes in his game. Would I like to see him against Anderson? I mean, in the sense that he's a fresh challenger, and he's been winning, he's kind of deserving it. Yeah, I would like to see it. Do I think he could do it? Beat Anderson? Probably not. Honestly, I'd like to. The thing is, because of the wrestling and the power, I'd actually like to see what Mark Munoz would be able to do against like Chael Sonnen. To be perfectly honest, I wonder if that's a bad stylistic matchup for Sonnen, or can Sonnen impose his game on Munoz? Two wrestlers who are good at getting back to their feet when they're taken down, and it'd be pretty interesting, and Munoz has that power too. Leben, it's Leben, he reaches a certain point, he definitely is a gatekeeper. I've always said he's a gatekeeper. You beat Leben, you can fight to the top of the division. There's always fun fights for him, Leben Kung Lee, Leben Vitor Belfort. There's a lot of good fights for him. He's definitely, and the guy's a scrapper. The guy was bleeding heavily. The doctors were kind of dumb in this, though. It was kind of like, oh, he can't see. Well, the ref's out, and then the ref was all like, oh, well, Chris, can you tell me if you can see or not? And he's like, yeah, I can see. And he was saying he can't see. It was just totally messed up as far as what their duties are. It's cool, it's cool seeing Leben still fighting through that adversity. He lost. It's definitely a Leben performance here. Next fight after that, Renan Barão beat. Oh yeah, I want to say this too. If I'm not mistaken, I got 100% picks here. I was really surprised. So I was pretty happy with that too. Because some of them, like Diabate, for example, could have easily beat Barrage. You never know how Pickett would do, but Barão really showed his stuff. And the undercard, a lot of fights, you never know how they go too. But yeah, I was pretty happy with that actually. Continuing on though, Renan Barão beat Brad Pickett by rear naked choke in the first round. Good fight, man. This was a great performance. This is definitely probably the most newsworthy thing on the card. Maybe the Munoz win, but it's a fresh bantamweight contender. Barão is now in the proverbial mix. He looked really good against Brad Pickett, who was Pickett was brawling, and the guy's got a hell of a chin. But Burrell, I mean, he's just a straighter puncher. Man, when he took, he got a knee on Pickett. He seriously jumped on his back so quickly. It was just a great overall performance by Renan Burrell. I like his technique and stand-up. He is a lot more crisp than Pickett with his hands. But he does kick as well and knee. So his overall Muay Thai game is really good. And then he finished with the choke. I mean, he got to show a lot of his skill set here. Pickett, he's a fighter. I mean, this guy, sturdy chin, a little too much brawling, which really cost him against a more technical striker here. But there's still good matchups for him. The loser of Bowles versus Faber, Eddie Wineland, Joseph Benavidez. There's great fights. I'd give like Benavidez, like Renan Burrell or Renan Burrell. Honestly, though, to be perfectly honest with you, I would like to see Burrell versus Cruz. Simply because it's a fresh matchup and it's an interesting stylistic matchup. I think Burrell showed in that fight against Pickett that he might be the most technical striker, and not so much as a wrestle boxer as Cruz's previous opponents. Not to take away from like Benavidez, Faber, Jorgensen, and Demetrius Johnson, but Burrell showed me in this fight that he definitely has a skill set that Dominic Cruz hasn't really faced yet. Just really technical striking, or really technical, or just like more technical than some of the guys that Cruz has fought in the past. And those jiu-jitsu skills. I mean, that's some really high-level jiu-jitsu. Nova Uno, no joke. And Burrell really showed those skills by taking the back, cinching up the rear naked choke that wasn't even underneath Pickett's chin. Great performance from him. Personally, I'd like to see Burrell Cruz next. I think if Faber beats Bowles, they'll probably do Faber versus Cruz, number 3. But they could give Burrell someone like Benavidez. It's a thin division. I mean, seriously, Burrell's probably the only real next title challenger, though. So you can either make him wait, or you can give him someone pretty strong, like a Benavidez, an Eddie Wineland, a Demetrius Johnson, and that's pretty risky. I don't know if they want to do that. Next fight after that, Thiago Alves beat Papi Abedi by his very first submission by rear naked choke in the first round. Abedi's still someone to look out for. He was willing to trade with Alves, but Alves is just way too crisp of a striker. He's defensively sound and very patient. This guy does not cock his punches. He doesn't throw like looping overhand rights or looping haymakers. They're really crisp strikes, and that managed to find Abedi's chin. Abedi was a prospect, and he very much showed his prospect status until he got caught. He is a good striker. He didn't get to show much of his judo game, as Alves was stuffing anything from the clinch against the cage and pushing off. I really like that. A lot of guys against the cage, they don't know how to get off of the cage, and they don't know when to push off. Alves, when you see him against the cage, eventually he finds his way out, and I really like that. A lot of fighters, that's one thing I'm starting to like to see in MMA. A lot of guys also getting back to your feet when you're taken down, especially against a wrestler, is another thing I like to see. And a lot of people just don't do enough of that. With Alves, I mean, I think like Abedi kind of lost twice in a sense. When Alvarez dropped him, I think it was just like a left hook and some follow-up punches. He did some ground and pound that probably should have finished the fight, but the ref let it go longer. Then he got mount. He started to put his hand on his face and push his head with his hand and started elbowing him. And then he picked up this rear naked choke. It was a great performance by Thiago Alves and really showed why he's a top 10 fighter. There's still fights for him in the division. I mean, he's fought Fitz, he's fought Kozjek. Condit would be really cool. Obviously, that'd be really cool. Nick Diaz would be really cool. Maybe a rematch with Rick Story. The winner of Story versus Campman. Campman would be a cool fight. Someone was saying Alves versus Paulo Thiago. I think that's a little too low for him at this point. If you want to test a guy like Rory McDonald, Thiago Alves would be pretty cool too. With Abedi, welterweight it has no shortage of fighters. I mean, I would kind of place him more towards the mid-tier. Paulo Thiago would have been pretty cool actually versus Abedi. If you want to give him something like a Mike Swick, maybe Dan Hardy versus Abedi, because I wouldn't mind seeing Abedi beat up Dan Hardy. That'd be cool too. There's just there's a lot of guys you can fight. Charlie Brenneman, anyone from Strikeforce, maybe some Strikeforce imports. There's just a lot of guys for him to fight. Welterweight's just a stacked division. There's no shortage of fighters for both of these guys to fight. Next fight after that, Anthony Perosh beat Cyril Diabate by rear naked choke in the second round. Perosh, the thing with Diabate is he's a really good striker. He didn't really. There were times where he was stalking forward, which is really good. He showed he was a superior striker. I think he came off as a little bit not pulling the trigger. I picked Perosh to win anyways. He managed to find a way to take it to the ground. His mount, it was really deadly. Perosh would keep Diabate in mount throughout the whole time. I think he was in a bad position, and he went to north-south for like a second, and then went back to mount. Diabate would try and roll over to his back. Perosh would just stay on his back. Just good, and he'd brutalize him from top, eventually getting that rear naked choke. The thing with these two, they are lower level, like the lower tier light heavyweights. They're also in their late 30s. It's really hard to see where these guys go. I mean, it's not like Perosh is going to be some title contender now. I think he'll just fight like, the division actually. Outside of the top of the division, light heavyweight's actually getting pretty thin outside of their top fighters. So it's kind of tough to say. I think he's fought like James Tahuna before, or Kryak. I think Perosh was supposed to fight Krzysztof Sosinski, so that'd be a good fight. Diabate, just any other lower tier guy, I guess. There's fights for him, but they're not anyone that do anything for the division, really. Next fight after that, Terry Adam beat Edward Faloto by guillotine in 17 seconds in the first round. Faloto's got to be cut. This guy's just not winning in the UFC. He just lost in 17 seconds by guillotine. Terry Adam, I've always liked the guy. Solid striking. His ground skills are really good. He hasn't had that breakout performance, or not breakout performance, but just like that one win that really vaults him to a higher level. He's lost like Rafael Dos Anjos. I think he's lost like Rich Clemente as well. But he has a solid skill set, and he's pretty young too. I think he can do a lot in the division. I forgot if Adams fought Stout, but that would be a pretty cool fight. I don't know if you want to give him like a Cerrone yet, but maybe Wyman versus Adam would be cool too. So lightweight's also a really stacked division. There's a lot of guys that Adam could fight. Okay, prelim card. You have John McGuire making his UFC debut and beating Justin Edwards by unanimous decision. McGuire, Edwards had a bad game plan here. He shouldn't have been trying to take the fight to the ground, or clinch up with McGuire, because he would get Edwards would get taken down. He was actually outstriking him pretty well, actually, but McGuire managed to take the fight to the ground and get some dominant positions. Except to say, he didn't impress me too much. I never saw too much in Justin Edwards, to be perfectly honest with you. So it's really tough to say where McGuire goes in the welterweight division. He has some padding. I wonder if he should cut to lightweight, which is also a really stacked division as well. Maybe, but there's a lot of strong wrestlers in welterweight. It's really tough to say where you put these guys. With Edwards, I guess you can give him one more fight, but there's maybe he can be the guy that Amir Sadallah beats up or something like that. I guess honestly, he's like one of three. I mean, he did beat Lopez in his last fight. But, I never saw him as a UFC caliber fighter, to be perfectly honest. With McGuire, like I said, it's tough to say. I'd give him some more lower level fighters. I don't really know if he's much of a prospect. I didn't see anything that impressed me too much. Next fight after that, we had some heavyweights as Philip DeFries beat Rob Broughton. This is 2 losses in a row for Broughton. He lost to Travis Brown before this. Might be cut, might not, because the heavyweight division's so thin. They can always use another body there, as a comeback fight for whoever or whatnot. DeFries, he beat like Stan Ekonomu, Rob Broughton now. I think he's fighting some more lower level heavyweights. Can't really say who. I don't know if you want to give him to someone like a Struve to beat up on or something. Tough to say. Next fight after that, Michihiro Omigawa finally got his very first UFC win as he beat Jason Young by unanimous decision. This is 2 losses in a row for Jason Young. Featherweight is still in a building stage, so maybe you keep him. He lost to Dustin Poirier before this. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, Dustin Poirier before this, and he lost to Omigawa. I always like Omigawa. Give him there's some good fights for him. You can give him like Mike Brown, Nam Fan. He's a solid fighter. He has good, really good judo skills. Some pretty decent boxing. Really good cardio as well. So there's fights for him in the featherweight division. I hope he can win more. It's nice seeing a Japanese guy, especially a guy who's now in his second stint in the UFC, finally get his very first win in the UFC. Next fight after that, Che Mills beat Chris Cope by a knee in the first round in 40 seconds. Chris Cope is not a UFC caliber fighter. I don't, yeah, he beat Chuck O'Neal in the Ultimate Fighter finale, but come on, the guy's not UFC caliber. I thought Che Mills beat the guy, and he beat him pretty bad with that knee. I think it was a knockout of the night. Che Mills is in the welterweight division. Striking looks really crisp, but the problem is with welterweight, there's a lot of grapplers and a lot of guys that want to take him down. So he's going to be tested there. And I want to see if he can do anything against the grapplers. Cope, like I said, I'm not impressed with the guy. He is a fan favorite with his whole woo thing. But honestly, just not the UFC caliber guy. I honestly think he should be cut, even though he's just off 1 loss. He's just not good enough to be in the UFC, in my opinion. And I like I said, if you want to use Chris Cope, because they really like Amir Sadallah, I keep going back to that, but it's just that it seems like the UFC really likes Amir Sadallah, And maybe if you want to give him like a Chris Cove as a comeback fight, you can do that. Otherwise, he doesn't serve much of a purpose. Shane Mills, there's guys he can fight in division. Just people more in the lower tier, I guess. Okay, and finally, Chris Carriacio beat Von Lee by split decision. What can you say? It's a bantamweight division. Both these guys will probably be capped after this. It's tough to say though where these guys go from here. To be honest, I forgot if it's bantamweight or featherweight actually. It's always the same thing. It's like and it's the prelims. You just got to give them other lower level fighters. Because they're not really ready for they're just prelim guys. You don't want to put them in the mid tier yet. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my UFC 138 post-fight analysis. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you very much.